you get to the question of how does so many people get taught this or encouraged into this? And I was very struck, this is very much in your wheelhouse, but one of the reunions of the survivors of the Nova Party, I got talking to a remarkable woman who was a therapist who was working with them.
One can never compare eyewitness to hearsay. Most of the news that we hear is basically hearsay. The news that we read is all considered hearsay. However, when you witness something in your own flesh eyes, that is irrefutable. And the great Talmud always uses this context that you can never compare seeing to hearing. When you see something with your own eyes, it's no longer a theory, it's no longer a possibility, but it's reality. What you see, you cannot erase because you have seen it. Mr. Douglas Murray, the author and journalist, who's a truth seeker, went down to Gaza. He, with his own eyes, saw what happened. And he's going to share with us what his impressions were from a first-hand eyewitness. Please subscribe to this channel, and let's grow this channel from 40,000 to 50 to 100 and more. Please listen in to Mr. Douglas Murray's account from his personal visit to Gaza.
Rather heavy, I'll do it quickly, but a rather heavy day when I went in to see the Hamas terrorists that had been captured alive. And one of them I recognized. And that was a moment where I really did think again about the nature of evil. And yes, it's hard not to think of it in a theological context in this. There was a family who on the 7th were in their home in a small community in the south. And the oldest boy was a teenager, had already gone to the beach with friends, and a landing craft of Hamas came in and they killed him and his friends. And then they went to the community, and the father of the family was there in the house and ran into the bomb shelter with his 2 teenage sons. Well, I think the boys were 10 and 12 or thereabouts. And the terrorists came in, and the father, I've seen the video several times, it's pretty gruesome, but the father takes his 2 sons into the bomb shelter with him, and the Hamas throw a grenade in. And the father threw himself onto the grenade to save his sons. And they come out of the shelter staggering, I mean, both in their underwear, and and one of them, his eye had been blown out of his socket, and the other one had lost his hearing. His ear was off, and they come into the main room of the house, and again, it's all on video, and they're both completely disorientated. Of course, one of them is saying, "Where's father?" and the other one is saying, "Didn't you see him?" And then the terrorist who killed their father walks into the room with a Kalashnikov and just looks at the boys, goes to the fridge, opens the fridge, and gets out a Diet Coke and starts drinking it in front of them. Mm-hmm. And also later asks where their mother is.
That's how you demonstrate that the suffering is irrelevant, right? With that casual consumerist gesture.
Yes.
Right. And that, what would you say? That perversion of hospitality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So inevitably, yes, you get to the question of how does so many people get taught this or encouraged into this? And I was very struck, this is very much in your wheelhouse, but one of the reunions of the survivors of the Nova Party, I got talking to a remarkable woman who was a therapist who was working with them. And these were, of course, all deeply, deeply traumatized young people who were have difficult time for the rest of their lives. But there was a therapist who'd been working with them who I spoke with who said to me then, and it was something I thought about a lot, which was, don't forget, Douglas, that a psychopath is probably born. Sinoir was a type of psychopath, clearly. But she said, don't forget, sociopaths you have to make. And that was something I thought about a lot because, of course, what would happen if you had control of a civilian population like the almost 2 million people in Gaza, a population that doubled in the time that Israel was said to be doing a genocide there, by the way, but park that aside as a mere fact. What would you do if you had a civilian population for 18 years and you were a death cult and you ruled it? You would teach what Hamas taught in Gaza, which was to teach the young Gazan Palestinians how to join the death cult, to admire it, to be part of it, so that when...
To strive for attainment within it.
For it. It's all very well documented, but the soldiers who were going house to house in 2014, there was a relatively minor war in Gaza compared to this one. And there are many soldiers I spoke to who were involved in the relatively minor conflict in 2014, who were also in Gaza since October 2023. They all said that they noticed when they did house-to-house clearing, going through, trying to find hostages, trying to find weapons, trying to find tunnel entrances, and trying to find the architects of the massacre. They all said the same thing, which was that in 10 years, there was a marked radicalization in the books, in the households, in the learning materials, in everything from, and it's not satire, math textbooks of, if you kill 2 Jews and kill another 2 Jews, how many dead Jews do you have? This is the way you learn arithmetic in Gaza under Hamas. This is something that many of us noticed and had warned about for years. But the fruit of this education system, the fruit of this indoctrination was October the 7th. And look at it. It's been it was a catastrophe for the Israelis, and it's turned out to be an utter disaster for the citizens of Gaza.
There's an immaturity and self-centeredness about psychopathy that's probably intrinsic. So... And it does vary to some degree with temperament. Like, there are violent 2-year-olds. And most of them are socialized by the time they're 4. And the ones who aren't are never socialized. They burn out in their 20s. But immaturity itself is egocentric and pleasure-seeking and power-dominant. And there's no reason to assume that you couldn't maximize that with the proper training. I mean, we train people. Yeah. I know it's a rough realization if your soul is Rousseauian and you believe that there's nothing but good in the heart even of children. And it's not that I have anything against children, and I think they're delightful, but before they're socialized, they're not social.
Yes.
And so it's not that hard to maintain not being social. And then the consequence of not being social is you're alienated, you trust no one. So then you live in a society where, what's it like to live in a society where you can trust no one, where there's no social groupings, where everyone's hell-bent on destruction? Well, it's going to turn you against the world. And that's a temptation to begin with. In the Cain and Abel story, Cain's temptation is to nurse resentment in consequence of the failure of his second-rate offerings, instead of to learn. And he kills Abel, and he fathers the genocidal masses.
Well, this is one of my conclusions about the nature of, specifically of anti-Semitism. It goes back to that Grossman quote, that it acts as a mirror to the failings of the person who suffers from it. So that, for instance, Israel's neighbors could notice that the society is GDP.
Are you tired of being held back by one-size-fits-all healthcare, or having your concerns dismissed?
And we realize and recognize that what happens indeed in Gaza all began with the leadership of Gaza. When a society is educated and taught and indoctrinated that death is more valued than life, then it's not surprising that when we saw people want to claim that the residents of Gaza are innocent. Have you not watched the videos of when they were marching the hostages, how they were cheering on, how they were celebrating? When they did the fake baby funeral, the Bibas, how thousands of Gazans were cheering on. It is obviously there's a whole couple generations of people who their brains got so twisted by their educational system. We often ask the same question about how did Hitler indoctrinate the Nazis and Germany to commit the atrocities as they did with the gas chambers and all the torturing and the mass shootings, everything that happened during World War II. How did an average German, which seemed to be a human being, turn into a devil, a monster, satanic types of acts? How does that happen to a society? How does someone in the year 2023 and 21st century wearing a GoPro camera crush a baby's head and tie up a group of children together with their parents and light a fire, put a baby in the oven in the presence of their parents? How do people become such monsters? In life and in the world, there's good and there is bad. God created children equally pure. What happens to us later in life is a result of our education, our environment, and our cultures. This is why education is paramount, to make sure that our educational system is right in place. I remember after President Ronald Reagan was shot in the 80s, it was then that my Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, may he rest in peace, launched an interesting campaign. And the campaign was a moment of silence in the public schools. Prayer was taken out of the public school system. So the mentioning of God is gone. So what the Rebbe wanted was that in every public school, children should have a moment of silence to think of anything but themselves. And they're going to come home and says, Mommy, Daddy, what am I supposed to do during the moment of silence? That's what the parents say. Well, you think about yourself, what your mission in life is, what your part in this world is. You think that there's a God who's watching and is listening and sees everything that you do. So a child knows that there's accountability. And a child knows that they are never alone. God is always with them. This is why the founding fathers of America felt in God we trust needs to be everywhere. Living in a godless society, in a godless home, makes our life's journey go in any direction as it leads to. So let's pray and hope that we can only know of good things. We appreciate Mr. Douglas Murray's account of his experiences in Gaza and how he is not Jewish, but he's bold enough and strong enough to stand tall for the truth and be a true truth seeker. God bless him. God bless you. God loves you.